Okay, so how many of us are guilty of either seeing or participating in wearing designer jeans, name brand t-shirts, or seeing those, I think it was Kristen who talked about bending over little, junior high girls, and you see their little name brand underpants.
Lord.
Okay? How often, what impact does clothing play on schools? Well, for one thing, they're expensive distractions. Christmas time's coming up. Students are asking for, I want this, I want that from Abercrombie & Fitch or H&M or American Eagle. And if students come without having their name brand clothes, they can feel like they're not included, or they can feel they're better than everybody else because look at what I have. Many times clothing can be dangerous. Hooded sweatshirts can hide students' identities, baggy pants can hide weapons and drugs, and clothing color many times can signify gang membership to either other students or the teacher, whether it's true or not. Most importantly though, clothing can cause fear. A lot of times children feel threatened, they feel as if they're victims, and it affects their attendance, whether or not they feel comfortable going to school, participating in class. So sometimes sorry, I'm so out of breath. Sometimes clothing requires a safety solution, and what I'm going to talk about today are public school uniforms and how potentially they could improve the school environment and help reduce envy, theft, and violence in the schools. So why don't we already have them today? Why aren't they already incorporated? Well, the American Civil Liberties Union opposes school uniforms, and they're very adamant on this. They suggest that school uniforms violate the First Amendment, which is the freedom of expression. Students should have the right to express themselves and their individuality through their clothing, not from what a school stipulates and what a school mandates. Others suggest that school uniforms can be Band-Aids, and I brought a Band-Aid, just to show you as a visual, that I lost it. It's over there. Alright, what does a Band-Aid do when we usually use a Band-Aid? It covers up a wound, but does it heal the wound? No. Some preconceived ideas about school uniforms are, we're all familiar with Harry Potter, the young wizard. He wears school uniforms, all of him and his friends, when they go to Hogwarts. School uniforms are just for Catholic boys and girls. Or, how many of us are familiar with Will Smith in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? They all wear school uniforms, and they go to an upper-class school. So why should they be put in public schools? Well, historically, school uniforms can date back to as far as the 16th century, when the English orphans wore them. And in 1894, an actual college incorporated school uniforms as a student equalizer. In 1932, a school in Indiana, which isn't too far away, favored uniforms to eliminate the class distinctions. And in 1996, the most recent information I found, or a quote from President Bill Clinton, which we're all familiar with, and it's all in our time period, is him being quoted saying, "I challenge all schools to teach character education, good values, and good citizenship. And if it means teenagers will stop killing each other over designer jackets, then public schools should be able to require school uniforms." Some effects of school uniforms that I'm going to talk about occurred in Long Beach Unified School District. This was kind of a study done, but more so it was just a way to improve their school. In 1994, this school district in California implemented school uniforms for the grades kindergarten through 8th grade in an urban school district. A year later, their statistics showed that school crime dropped, school sex offenses dropped, vandalism dropped, fighting dropped, suspensions dropped, and assault and battery dropped. But more importantly, the average attendance became a record-breaking high of 95%. Outstanding results, but the problem with this evidence was at the same time Long Beach implemented the school uniforms, they also had their teachers monitoring the halls more and taking a more active role within their students. And some more effects occurred in 2000 when a uniform policy was put into play, and 27% of the elementary schools in the United States incorporated school uniforms. In 1999, New York City was the largest school district to first do this in the United States. and they approved the voluntary school uniforms for the grades K through 8. Other cities did this within their public schools, but how many of you attended school in Chicago? How many was it a public school? Did you wear a uniform?
Yes.
Well, Illinois' policy suggests that when necessary to maintain the orderly process of a school function or prevent endangerment of student health or safety, you are to incorporate school uniforms within your school. The White House Manual on School Uniforms actually suggests and reports that school uniforms do improve the overall school environment. So my research, anecdotal versus empirical. What public school officials say versus what the actual research says. Well, Norman Summers, he is an associate professor at Ashland University, examined how children dress at school affects the behavior. He did a study where he had 5 high schools, 4 junior high middle schools, and 10 elementary schools. Altogether, it was 8,194 students. He put three days aside each week to perform this study, and one day was a dress-up day, one day was a dress-down day, and one day was a regular dress day for the students in the schools. Each day, he made sure it was on the same day of the week and was never before or after a holiday or a special event. The results: every grade level had more behavior problems on dress-down days. Every grade level had fewer behavior problems on dress-up days. The conclusion was that school clothing does affect the behavior. So what's the obvious recommendation, he said, was to set a level of dress below students may not go. Here's some charted results actually from the article, and you can actually see the increased level of behavior problems on the dress-down days. Well, some more research, it got questioned, and Brunsman and Rockmore performed a school uniform quantitative research. They used the National Educational Longitudinal Study of 1988, that's a mouthful, and they followed students through 10 years of school. They used these complex dummy situations where they weighted the distribution of minority status and the student gender and how that was related and connected to the school uniforms and the outcomes, how the students performed in school, behaved, etc., etc. Their results were that school uniforms do not decrease absenteeism, behavior problems, substance abuse, and they definitely do not increase the student achievement. Who's right? There was a little he said, she said battle. What went on? Well, Bodine questioned this in 2003. And he works for the Department of Anthropology in the University of Texas, and he called Brunsman and Rockmore's research a misleading use of sector analysis. He said that their research was only based on what the students remembered after the 10 years. The uniform of the not even all the schools were public schools, and not even all the schools, only 30 of the schools out of 4,171 schools even wore the school uniforms. Brunsman and Rockmore, they defended themselves though, and they said we should have performed an analysis involving public school students only, but that the results and their interpretations would have still remained the same. Brunsman criticized the other studies that favored the school uniforms, like Long Beach we talked about earlier, and how it was more on the modifications in the school environment with the teachers monitoring the hallways. Other case studies were done which he was able to oppose as well. So are school uniforms financially feasible? Well, uniform supporters do say they cost significantly less. You can buy a full year supply of school uniforms that cost somewhere between $70 and $90, or you can buy one pair of a name brand article of clothing, a pair of jeans, whatever, that can cost $100 or more. The family, also, when schools do incorporate school uniforms, they will help finance the uniforms. There's local corporations that will help donate money or school uniforms themselves in their school work programs. However, the opponents say that school uniforms are a waste of money. You have to buy your student their school uniform and what they decide to wear after school or on the weekends. The American Civil Liberties Union suggests that the schools should spend their money in other ways to promote safety within the schools, such as increased security at the school entrances or safer routes, etc. Believe it or not, there's actually been debates taken to court about school uniforms. In 1995, the American Civil Liberties Union sued Long Beach Unified School District, claiming that Long Beach did not help provide school uniforms for families of low income. Well, Long Beach's response was that they had a local company donate $160,000 to find uniforms for low-income families. Fortunately, the courts usually do side with the schools districts in issues of health, safety, and potential disturbance of the learning environment. However, the manual on school uniforms recommends that the school does take precautions. Always have parent involvement. Protect the rights of all your students, with whether they're expression rights or religious freedom, and treat the school uniforms as a protection plan. So types of policies. Mandatory versus voluntary. How do you do it? Well, there's a lot of schools provide the opt-out option, which is a provision that gives the parents the power to say, I don't want my child to go to a school wearing school uniforms. In Long Beach Unified School District, their mandatory uniforms has an opt-out provision, and students are not sent to another school if they choose to opt out. They can still go, they just don't wear the uniform. In Seattle, Washington, and Phoenix, Arizona, their mandatory school uniforms are if you decide not to wear a uniform, you get sent to another school in the same school district. In Kansas City, Missouri, their uniforms are known before the students ever arrive into the schools. So then there's the no opt provision where you don't give the parents the right to say, I don't want my child to participate. Enforcement, there's a domino effect. One child says, I don't want to participate in school uniforms, so then their parents don't let them, and then they get their buddy to do it, and it's just a continuous cycle. Or else you can have the successful failure, which is when 7 families out of 454 families never wore uniforms in the state of New Hampshire. The American Civil Liberties Union, researchers, parents, school officials, and student opposition all need to take an active part in the mandating of school uniforms. And when there's an infraction, there's 3 different ways that you can moderate it. So in conclusion, school uniforms come with red tape. There's policies that need to be followed, possible opt-out provisions that need to be considered, and legal entanglements and compliance issues that you need to be aware of and prepared for. School safety should always come first, and the debate's still going on today with the supporters and the opponents. But the numbers matter, and more empirical evidence through research is needed before any decision is ever made.